Dust swirled in the golden light of the late afternoon as Jack leaned against the weathered fence of his ranch, watching the horizon bleed into twilight. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant whinny of a horse. He turned, heart heavy, to his dying mare, her once bright spirit now dimmed by illness. Then she appeared. Lily, with her tangled hair and wide, haunted eyes, stepped softly from the shadows of the barn. Whispers of the town followed her like ghosts, but Jack saw only the fragile flicker of hope in her gaze. "Can you help her?" he asked, desperation clawing at his voice. Lily nodded, her small hands trembling as she approached the mare. In the stillness, she began to sing, a hymn that floated through the air, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Jack felt something shift, a spark of possibility igniting in the twilight. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dusty plains where the wind whispered secrets of the past. A lone figure stumbled through the brush, dirt smeared on her cheeks, her matted hair clinging to her neck like chains. She had been tossed between hands like a tattered rag doll, discarded by people who had forgotten their own humanity. The warmth of the afternoon sun was a distant memory as the chill of abandonment wrapped around her, squeezing tight. Each step reverberated with a haunting echo, the sounds of laughter from the barn now replaced with silence. She was lost. Jack's ranch appeared on the horizon, a sprawling canvas of browns and greens, punctuated by the creaking barn door, painted with years of sunlight and storms. He wiped the sweat from his brow, the weight of the day's work pulling at his shoulders. The last rays of light caught the glint of his tired eyes as he surveyed the land he called home. Beneath the hard surface of a seasoned rancher, his heart lingered with an ache. Life had been a series of relentless battles, a push against time and fading seasons. He thought he knew loneliness, but that day was different. As he approached the edges of his property, he noticed her, hunched over, a mere silhouette against the backdrop of the setting sun. Panic flickered in his chest as he recognized the unmistakable vulnerability etched in her frail form. He recalled the whispers of the townsfolk. They had called her possessed, a girl with dark eyes that seemed to peer into the depths of one's soul, bound by invisible strings of fear. Jack had always kept his distance, his heart a barricade against drama, but now something compelled him forward. With each step, apprehension knotted his stomach, mixed with an unexpected rush of empathy. She didn't flinch as he approached. She stared ahead, lost in a world of her own. He reached out slowly, uncertain if his touch would ignite flames of fright or comfort in her. The moment his fingers brushed her shoulder, she jerked away, eyes widening as if his presence was a ghost. The moment hung heavy in the air, the distance between them marked by unspoken stories and a trembling silence. Jack saw the flash of fear in her eyes, a window to the torment that had driven her here. He was a man of action, but words often eluded him, especially in the face of something so fragile. "Hey there," he murmured, deliberately letting the emotion seep into his voice. "You all right?" The question hung in the stillness like a sonorous bell, echoing against her scars. She didn't respond, only turned her gaze toward the horizon, as if seeking solace from a world that had betrayed her. The ranch had an air of serenity, but it throbbed with the unspoken pain of unshed tears and dreams that had long since evaporated. Jack's horse, once a proud creature, now lay confined to the stable, plagued by sickness that stole its spirit. He had watched it decline, helpless against the encroaching shadow of death. He had resigned himself to the fact that some battles were unwinnable, but as he stood there with the girl, this lost soul, he felt a glimmer of hope. She was an ember in a darkened room, but he feared that she too might extinguish. They stood together in silence, the world around them alive with the soft rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds settling in for the night. The girl was like a wild animal, her heart racing beneath the surface, distrust palpable in the air between them. Jack felt the chasm widen. He struggled to build a bridge toward her, yet every move felt like an intrusion. She was a stranger, a specter of trauma who had wandered into his life uninvited. As night fell, the chill deepened, drawing long shadows over the ranch. Jack's breath swirled in the cool air as he watched her shuffle back toward the barn, hesitant yet drawn to the warmth of the structure, perhaps instinctively searching for safety. But he knew what lay inside, a dying horse, its spirit flickering like a candle in the wind. He wanted to offer her tenderness, a chance to feel again, yet he was anchored by his own wounds, holding tightly to the emotional distance that felt safer. In that fragile moment, he was a man caught between the longing to reach out and the fear of being tethered to another tragedy. The girl paused at the barn door, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of lantern light. For a fleeting second, Jack saw vulnerability etch across her face, a reflection of his own sorrow mingling with his curiosity. But then it slipped away, like smoke dispersing in the night air. In the silence, the weight of their unspoken connection hung heavily, and he realized that while they could share the same space, the chasm in their hearts could only grow deeper. The sun sank low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty ranch yard as Lily stepped off the weathered porch. The wooden boards creaked beneath her boots, a sound of welcome mingling with the whispers of the wind. She clutched a handmade basket against her chest, fingers trembling slightly as she took in her surroundings. Everything felt oversized and foreign. The sprawling fields, the majestic mountains looming like guardians in the distance, and the wild, unkempt grass waving like a sea. A new chapter waited in the stillness, both exhilarating and daunting. In the fading light, Jack emerged from the barn, his silhouette framed by the heavy door. His rugged face bore the marks of long days spent laboring under the sun, and beneath his broad exterior lay an air of gentle solemnity. As he approached Lily, he raised a hand in greeting, but the warmth of his smile felt distant, shrouded by the weight of the unspoken. She offered a tentative smile in return, unsure how to bridge the gap between them, the silence around them almost palpable. An uneasy chill snaked through the evening air, settling in the pit of her stomach. Their first dinner together was an awkward affair. Jack set a modest spread on the table, the plates heavy with simple fare, beans, cornbread, and a pitcher of sweet tea. He watched Lily as she took her seat, the clatter of forks and knives filling the void that words should have occupied. She picked at the food, each bite a reminder of the uncertainty that clung to her. Jack spoke little, focused on the way the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow through the window. The silence was thick, a palpable thing that hinted at the hesitance in their hearts. Days passed, moving in a slow dance of shared chores and unspoken boundaries. Lily found comfort in the rhythm of life at the ranch. The feeding of the chickens, the brushing of the horses, and the early morning hush that enveloped them. Jack watched her with cautious curiosity, a specter of restraint hovering between them. He noted the way she whispered soothing words to the livestock, her voice a melodic balm. But the weight of the town's whispers lingered in the back of his mind, the rumor that she was somehow different, haunted, and perhaps even possessed. One evening, as the twilight deepened into a velvet sky, Lily wandered towards the corral. It was a ritual of sorts, an escape from the confines of their uneasy coexistence. There, under the sprawling canopy of stars, she felt a connection she hadn't yet found with Jack. The horses shuffled nearby, their breath puffing in the cool night air. And then she saw him, Jack's horse, a once proud stallion named Duke, now reduced to a mere shadow of his former self. The horse's ribs jutted sharply from his sides, and Jack's worried creases deepened as he knelt beside him. Crouched beside the ailing animal, Jack spoke softly, his voice nearly lost in the rustling grass. Lily watched, the unease in her chest shifting into something deeper, a longing to share in his burden. She stepped forward, instinctively resting a hand on Duke's flank. At that moment, a hymn slipped from her lips, a song she had sung countless times before. It was a melody steeped in hope, an offering of warmth and light that seemed to hover in the air. Jack paused, his gaze flickering up to Lily in surprise. The sound wove around them, saturating the quiet night. Duke lifted his head, ears pricked, and for a heartbeat, magic hung between them like a fragile thread. It was a song of solace, a hymn that embraced the shadows and whispered promises of healing. As Lily sang, something shifted, a glimmer of life ignited behind Duke's eyes, a flicker of recognition in the depths of his spirit. Lily's voice grew stronger, weaving through the cool night as if it were a balm. Jack felt something within him stir, an unfamiliar hope rising up alongside the melody. He knelt beside her, mesmerized by the connection she forged, not just with Duke, but with the very essence of life itself. The darkness that had grown so heavy in the days prior began to lift, leaving them with an unspoken bond and a shared understanding that filled the emptiness between them. As the hymn faded into the stillness, Jack felt a warmth blossom in his chest. Duke shifted beneath Lily's hand, an inexplicable spark of life igniting anew. In that moment, the weight of the whispers, the fear and the uncertainty began to dissolve, replaced by the fragile promise of healing and connection that lingered in the air, an unbreakable thread between them. Days rolled into weeks at the ranch, a quiet, solitary world, punctuated by the rhythmic creaking of the barn doors and the distant lowing of cattle. Morning light spilled through the window panes like liquid gold, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air, a soft reminder of the life within. Lily moved through the morning chores with a mechanical grace, her hands deftly milking the goats and gathering eggs, the routine as familiar to her as the sound of the rooster crowing. Yet there was a weight in the air, an unspoken tension hanging between her and Jack, a rift formed by their disparate worlds. Jack watched her from the shadows of the barn, the way she bent and stretched, her hair catching the light, halo-like against the barn's rustic backdrop. His heart stirred with an emotion he couldn't quite name, the lines of curiosity weaving dangerously close to the edges of something deeper. He remembered the first time she had arrived, her haunted eyes flickering with shadows of her past, speaking in hushed tones about demons and darkness. Yet here she was, a paradox, fragile yet fierce, a girl who had wrestled with her demons and emerged for all intents and purposes, unbroken and resilient. As days turned into predictable cycles, they fell into a routine that was both comforting and disquieting. Lily, with her penchant for humming old hymns, filled the air with melodies that seemed to reverberate through the very bones of the ranch. Jack found himself drawn to her songs, captivated by the way they twisted around his heart, filling the empty spaces he hadn't known were there. Each note seemed to draw him closer, stitching together pieces of his own heart that had frayed over years of solitude and loss. But beneath this budding camaraderie lay an unspoken tension, an emotional friction that danced like static in the air whenever their eyes met. Lily caught his gaze one afternoon as she stood in the paddock, brushing down a horse that had long been neglected. "You used to have a horse, didn't you?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence like a whisper of wind. Jack stiffened, the memory surfacing like a ghost. A chestnut stallion named Duke that had been his constant companion through childhood. "Yeah, he died a few years back," he replied, attempting to steer the conversation away from the pain. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, with unaddressed feelings swirling around them. Each night, as the stars blanketed the sky, Jack would retreat to his thoughts, the sounds of Lily's hymns echoing through his mind. There was a yearning growing in him, a desire to bridge the distance between them, yet he hesitated, afraid to shatter the fragile balance they had created. In those moments of stillness, shadows of his past crept into his consciousness, flickering reminders of the scars left by betrayal and loss. He feared the depths of connection that Lily's presence stirred within him, and that fear was repaid with silence that lingered like a mist. On the day the storm rolled in, dark clouds swirled ominously overhead, heavy with the promise of rain. The ranch buzzed with a chaotic energy as Jack hurried to secure the fences and prepare for the worst. Lily moved with purpose beside him, a determined glint in her eyes. "We can't let the horses out in this," she urged, her voice slicing through the tension. The urgency in her tone sparked something in Jack. He realized he couldn't let her face the storm alone. They worked side by side, a synchrony emerging, their movements mirroring a partnership forged in turmoil. After the sky unleashed its fury, they found themselves drenched and breathless, faces flushed with the exhilaration of having navigated the storm together. Lily laughed, a light, unguarded sound that tugged at something deep within Jack. As the rain faded into a soft patter, they retreated to the barn, their bodies buzzing with the aftermath of shared experience. Jack's heart raced, consciousness aflame with the realization that this girl with her troubled past, held the power to heal the very part of him he thought irreparable. In the dim light of the barn, they stood close, the air thick with unspoken words. "You know, I heard you singing last night," Jack finally admitted, the vulnerability in his tone making his heart pound. It calmed me. The confession hung between them, the power of connection palpable in the air. Lily's cheeks flushed, and for the briefest moment, Jack could see the flicker of something more in her eyes. But just as quickly, her smile faded and the shadows returned, a reminder of the burdens she carried. And just like that, between the cords of sorrow and solace, their lives continued to intertwine, a delicate balance of healing and haunting, of hope and fear. Jack could feel something shifting in the air, a current of possibility, but the friction, the emotional distance, kept them anchored in uncertainty. He wanted to know her, to trust her with the scars buried deep within, but the memories of past betrayals loomed large, and somehow even amidst the growing connection, he felt miles away. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the ranch as the day slipped reluctantly into twilight. Jack stood by the paddock, watching the silhouette of his horse, Dusty, stumble and graze, struggling against the weight of his own illness. Lily had immersed herself in the chores, her laughter light like the breeze, but Jack sensed a storm brewing beneath the surface. Her resilience puzzled him. How could someone who seemed so strong also be so fragile? That evening, after a long day of hard labor, the two sat on the porch, the air thick with unsaid words. Jack fidgeted with the frayed hem of his worn jeans, glancing at Lily now and then. She appeared deep in thought, gazing into the darkening landscape. As fireflies began to dance around them, he finally broke the silence, the weight of his worries spilling over. "You're not scared, are you?" The question hung between them, sharp and probing. Jack immediately regretted it, feeling the tension in the air shift. Lily turned to him, her expressive eyes clouded, and he could see the vulnerability she had tried to conceal. It was as if a thin veil separating their worlds had started to tear. "I'm scared of losing Dusty," he admitted, his voice low but steady. I don't know how to fix this." The admission felt raw, stripped of his usual bravado. He was a rancher, a man of the land, yet here he was, powerless in the face of a dying animal that had been his closest companion for years. He looked away, the weight of his concern pressing against his chest, the openness he revealed feeling as naked as winter air. Lily turned fully towards him, her brow furrowing. "You think I'm just some girl who can't handle things?" Her voice trembled slightly, igniting a flicker of frustration within Jack. "You don't know what I've seen. You don't know the dark corners of my life." Her words were sharp, but he saw the pain that followed them, layered beneath her bravado. "No, that's not what I meant," he replied quickly, feeling the sting of misunderstanding crackle between them. "It's just, I can't bear to lose him, and I thought you might know something. You seem to connect with him like no one else can." The desperation in his voice softened his tone, exposing a sincerity he rarely allowed himself to share. It was an admission of both his hope and fear. Lily stared at him, her facade beginning to crumble. "I thought I'd be able to help him, but what if I can't?" The vulnerability in her voice sent a jolt through Jack. This was a different side of her, stripped of the shield she wore like armor. He hadn't realized how much she felt the weight of expectation, or how much she carried internally, despite her outward strength. "I believe you can," he said gently, leaning a little closer. The fireflies buzzed softly around them, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety. "I've seen what you can do." When you sang to him, it was like he could feel your heart. "Your belief has a power, Lily. Don't doubt that." His words felt like a bridge, reaching out to her. A plea for her to accept not only her gift, but the bond that had begun to form between them. Lily looked away, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But what if it's not enough? What if my past is too heavy to carry into this?" The two sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken fears. Jack reached out, resting his hand on hers, feeling the warmth radiating from her skin. "We all have burdens," he murmured, "but maybe sharing them is the first step to healing." The darkness deepened around them, but within the shadows, a flicker of hope ignited. They lingered in that moment, hand in hand, fragile hearts laid bare under the vast expanse of an unyielding sky. Jack felt the weight of his doubts lifting, a new resolve taking shape within him, for Dusty, for Lily, and for a bond that neither of them had truly anticipated. Moonlight spilled over the vast expanse of the ranch, illuminating the weathered barn and casting long shadows across the ground. Lily stood at the entrance, the cool breeze tousling her hair as she gazed into the wooden depths where Jack worked tirelessly. The rhythmic creak of the barn doors echoed softly, merging with the distant sounds of crickets chirping in harmony. Jack's silhouette moved deliberately, focusing on a stack of hay bales. There was an energy in the air, a silent exchange that simmered between them, a tension neither fully understood. With each passing day, Lily felt the weight of Jack's kindness pressing at her heart. He had taken her in, a girl with a reputation that preceded her, and he offered not judgment, but shelter. Yet it was more than the warmth of the ranch that drew them together. It was the unyielding bond created in the shared silence, in the moments when words fell short. Each encounter carried an unspoken promise, a tether that connected them amidst the chaotic fears of the world outside the ranch. As she stepped closer to the barn, the faint scent of hay mingled with the distant aroma of wild sage. She hesitated, then took a steadying breath, recalling the fragile look in Jack's eyes as he tended to his dying horse. The animal lay sprawled in the paddock, its breaths shallow and sporadic. But that day she had discovered something inside her, an ancient tune that whispered from the depths of her soul. She felt it brewing again, ready to echo across the darkness, ready to bridge the gap between them. "Lily," Jack's voice broke through the stillness, deep and warm, like a blanket thrown over a chilly night. He turned, his hands dusty and worn, a testament to his labor. The corners of his mouth curled slightly upward as he saw her, a small gesture that ignited a spark in her chest. "I could use an extra set of hands." The invitation, though simple, draped over her like a cherished gift, igniting the frayed edges of her spirit. At his side, she felt the solid presence of him, a grounding force against the storm brewing inside her. As they worked, their hands brushed occasionally, lingering longer each time, as if the moment needed a few extra heartbeats to truly settle. The barn transformed into a sanctuary. The air thickened with unspoken words and mutual understanding. She caught his gaze, and for a moment the world beyond ceased to exist. The ranch, the whispers of her past, everything faded away, leaving only Jack. Lily found herself humming softly, the melody rising from somewhere deep within her as they worked side by side. Jack paused, his hands resting on the rack of tools, listening. He turned, captivated by her voice, which seemed to resonate with the very essence of life itself. It was a gentle hymn, laced with longing and hope. The notes floated between them, binding them in that sacred moment, igniting memories buried beneath layers of pain and sorrow. As the last notes faded into the stillness, Jack stepped closer, drawn to her like a moth to the flame. "You have a gift," he said, his voice low and reverent. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm, a connection that sent shivers dancing down her spine. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she was not just the girl they called possessed. Maybe she was something more, something worth nurturing, something that could heal. In that instant, with the moon casting silver rays upon their intertwined shadows, she felt a warmth blossom within her, an unguarded trust that began to weave between them. She glanced up, meeting his gaze, filled with a mixture of vulnerability and strength. Jack's eyes spoke of understanding, and in that exchange, the unspoken bond deepened. They were two souls, scarred but resilient, standing on the precipice of something wondrous and terrifying. Outside, the stars twinkled above in silent acknowledgement of their connection, bearing witness to the transformative power of love and vulnerability. Within the heart of the barn, amidst the scent of hay and the murmur of the night, she found a sense of belonging, a place where her hymn could take root, where the seeds of hope could flourish, and where she could finally dare to heal not only the horse but also the fragments of her own soul, stitched together by the gentle hands of Jack. Lily stood at the edge of the pasture, her heart pounding in rhythm with the distant claps of thunder. The ominous clouds rolled in, dark and heavy, mirroring the turmoil inside her. Jack's horse, Whisper, lay in the corral, breathing shallowly, flickers of life waning with each passing moment. The dread of losing the horse pitted against her own haunting fears, a battleground of guilt and uncertainty that gnawed at her. She had been brought to this ranch under the weight of whispers, labeled an outcast long before the sun had risen that day. The townsfolk had called her possessed, branding her a curse and a pariah. Yet here she was, with the only person who had ever looked beyond that stigma, Jack. The more she had come to care for him, the heavier the burden of her perceived darkness became, coiling tighter around her heart. Lily had felt the power within her, the unexplainable pulse that seemed to tether her to the earth and the creatures that inhabited it. But with that realization came fear. A fear that her gift was also a curse. If she healed Whisper, would that light shine brighter, or would it burn her entirely? She turned to look at Jack, whose brow was furrowed in worry, and in that moment, the world around them faded into a silent cocoon where only their shared concern remained. "Lily," Jack's voice shattered the stillness, pulling her back to the moment. "Whisper needs you. I've tried everything." His eyes were desperate, a mixture of hope and helplessness that made her knees tremble. She could see the pain etched in his weathered hands, calloused from years of hard work, now clenched at his sides as he gazed at the fading creature. "I believe in you. Just try." The storm rumbled ominously overhead, lightning splitting the sky. But Lily felt a different kind of storm brewing within her, a tempest of doubt and defiance. Could she step into the light, defy the shadows that clung to her? She took a deep breath, aligning herself with the fragments of her resolve. She approached Whisper, whose deep brown eyes flickered with a semblance of recognition, and the air grew thick with tension. With every step closer, the whispers of the past clawed at her mind, echoing the taunts of children, the cold shoulders of adults. "You're cursed," they had said. The weight of their accusations hung heavy on her shoulders, yet here was a chance to break free. As she placed her hands against Whisper's flanks, the tremor of despair resonated through her. It was not merely the horse she touched, but the very essence of her own fears, the shackles of her past. Jack moved closer, crouching beside her, his unwavering gaze locked onto hers. "You're not cursed, Lily. You're a light. You can do this." His words wrapped around her like an embrace, pushing her to confront the storm within. She felt the warmth of his belief radiate into her trembling hands, igniting a flicker of courage that surged through her. Hesitating, she squeezed her eyes shut and drew upon the hymn her mother used to sing when darkness loomed near, a melody woven from echoes of hope and love. The notes began to pour from her lips, a fragile whisper in the chaos of the world outside. With every note, she let the fear dissipate. Images of her childhood flashed before her, moments of joy intertwined with those of sorrow. The duality of her existence forged into a singular truth. She could be both light and shadow. As the hymn wove its way through the air, Lily felt the energy shift. Whisper stirred beneath her touch, and Jack's breath caught, a gasp of wonder mingled with disbelief. The barn grew quiet, the storm above seeming to hold its breath, and in that moment of clarity, the power within her surged, intertwining with the spirit of the dying horse. She was no longer just a girl wearing the label of possessed. She was a conduit of healing, a beacon in the darkness, and her heart brimmed with light. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the ranch. Dust danced in the fading light as Jack stood at the barn door, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He glanced towards the paddock, where Lily sat on the ground beside the ailing horse, her fingers gently stroking its flank. The animal had grown weaker each day, its once bright spirit dimmed by the grip of illness. Jack could still remember the night he first brought Lily home. Her wild eyes filled with terror, haunted by whispers of a darkness that had chased her for years. Yet here she was, a beacon of hope amid despair. Lily looked up as Jack approached, her face illuminated by the golden glow of the setting sun, casting an ethereal light that seemed to transform her. "Shouldn't you be in the house, Jack?" she asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper against the soft rustle of the approaching night. But he could hear the tremor beneath it, a mix of determination and fear, as if she held within her the power to change everything. He moved closer, lingering at the edge of her solitude, unsure whether he had the courage to cross that threshold with her. "I can't leave him like this," Jack said, kneeling beside her. Their shoulders brushed, and he felt a warmth radiate from her body, a stark contrast to the chill creeping into the evening air. She had become his anchor, pulling him back from the brink of despair after losing his father, and the weight of inherited debts threatening to bury him. But now, it seemed the connection they had forged was not simply one of comfort. It was an intertwining of souls, fragile yet fierce. "There's still time," Lily insisted, her gaze locked onto the horse. The way she spoke was laced with an unshakable faith, but Jack could see the fear lurking beneath her brave facade. "I think I can help him." Her words were laden with a sense of purpose that struck him like lightning. Mixed in within his skepticism was a flicker of hope ignited by her unwavering spirit. This girl they had called possessed was slowly becoming more than just a shadow of her past. She was becoming a healer, a light in his life. The horse let out a soft whinny, its weary body shuddering beneath the weight of its illness. Jack's heart ached, a fragile reflection of the creature's suffering. He reached out, brushing a hand against the horse's neck, feeling its racing heartbeat beneath his fingertips. "What do you need?" he urged, feeling helpless, trapped in the fading light that mirrored the dwindling hope in his heart. Lily placed her palm on the horse's side, eyes closed, and breathed in deeply, as if summoning strength from the universe. And then, like a small miracle, Lily began to hum. The melody was soft at first, a gentle lilt that broke the heavy silence around them. It swelled, rising into something ethereal, a hymn woven with emotion, echoing through the fields and wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he watched her, the girl who had been labeled an outcast, now transforming into a conduit of grace. The air shimmered as though time itself held its breath, and Jack felt something shift within him. The darkness that had clouded his heart began to recede. With each note, the horse seemed to respond, its weary eyes sparking with renewed life. Jack held his breath, a mixture of awe and disbelief coursing through his veins. The hymn climbed higher, the world falling away until it felt as though the universe had narrowed to just this moment, their voices intertwined, a symphony of hope and healing. And then, at the crescendo of the song, the horse shuddered violently, as if struggling with a great weight. Jack reached out instinctively, almost as if he could stop the tide of suffering that had engulfed them both. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks, but her voice remained steady, a lifeline thrown across an abyss of despair. Jack felt a sudden pull, an inexplicable urge to join her in that moment, to add his own voice to the chorus that seemed to transcend the material world. As he opened his mouth, a shaky note escaped, harmonizing with hers, a testament to the pain they both carried. With their voices combined, the air thickened, and for the first time, he felt the barrier between hopelessness and faith begin to crack. And then, just as abruptly as it had begun, the hymn ended, fading into silence. The horse, radiant in the last flickers of daylight, stood tall, its chest heaving as it shook off the remnants of suffering. Jack's heart soared as he glanced at Lily, who wore a look of disbelief, mingled with joy. In that moment, the label of possessed fell away, and he saw her for who she truly was, a healer, a light, and perhaps the one who had come to save him from his own despair. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fire, Jack knew their lives would never be the same. Together, they had ignited a spark that would chase away the shadows, forever binding them in the tapestry of hope they had woven under the watchful gaze of the stars. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in an embrace of gold and crimson as the last of the day whispered its secrets to the horizon. Jack stood at the edge of the pasture, his fingers brushing the coarse mane of the once dying horse, now vibrant with life after the hymn that had woven through the air like a gentle breeze. Lily, barefoot in the grass, took a step closer, her shadow mingling with his. They shared a silence that felt sacred, and in that stillness, the world held its breath. A hawk circled overhead, its wings outstretched like freedom itself, reminding them of the wildness that still pulsed in their hearts. With a delicate gesture, Lily reached out, her hand resting softly on Jack's forearm. He turned to her, and in that moment, the weight of their past fears melted away, replaced by a warmth that blossomed between them like the first light of dawn. Looking back at the horse, they understood. Healing was a melody, a hymn that resonated not only through the songs of the earth, but also in the quiet bond they had forged. As the stars began to twinkle above, they stood together, united by the grace of a moment that spoke louder than words.